Welcome back. We're discussing Yemen and its capacity to resolve the multiple conflicts currently threatening its unity. Joining me in the studio today is the former U.S. ambassador to Yemen, Thomas Krajewski. He's now senior vice president for the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., and still an active duty Foreign Service officer with the U.S. Department of State. And from Sana'a in Yemen, we have abdul-ghani al-iryani, a prominent Yemeni independent development analyst and consultant. As we get back to our discussion here, let me ask you, Mr. al-Iryani, when it comes to the current humanitarian crisis, how is the government coping with so many displaced people, a massive food shortage, and it seems the humanitarian relief agencies can't seem to get access to them?
Well, this is unfortunate. The government has not handled the humanitarian situation as well as it should have. However, I think that several agencies are now in conflict zone serving the displaced.
Well, let me ask perhaps Ambassador Krajewski what you've seen in terms of the potential to try to do something for these people who've been displaced and seem to be caught in the middle of the fighting.
I mean, in the first place, this is, as you said in your introduction, Riz, this is one of the poorest countries in the world, and Sana'a is perhaps the poorest part of Yemen, up in the mountains on the Saudi Arabia border. So these are people who are living on the edge anyway. It doesn't take much to push them off the edge. There are a number of NGOs, international relief organizations, working with the Yemeni government and with organizations like USAID, who are willing and able to get up there. Security makes it difficult to do. I think the government needs to do more to enable these organizations to do their work and help these people who are in desperate
But Ambassador, isn't it, Yemen has always been a very difficult area for international, people to work, international sort of aid agencies to work, because there's a high sort of risk factor as far as the U.S. government perceives it, isn't there?
Yes, yes, yeah. There is, and I admire these people who go out and do it. Now, a lot of the people who are working for these organizations are Yemenis, taking a risk in their own country to work in places like this, but we have people who are willing to do it, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, and in Yemen, and we need to give them the opportunity to do that and help these people.
Mr. al-Iryani, to what degree is the Arab world providing support? There's generally a feeling that the Arab world is the last to step up and help its neighbors, and although the Arab League has been saying, making comments on what's going on in Yemen, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of direct action. What responsibility does the Arab world have to try to help the situation?
Well, the responsibility is obvious. Unfortunately, the Arab League and its member states have always been slow, and so far they have not really done anything for Yemen at this time, and we hope that they will.
What sort of help do you think they could provide in a way that at least would be diplomatic, wouldn't be seen as interfering with the politics, but certainly help the people who are caught in the middle of all this?
Well, for one thing, some of the funding of the al-Houthis comes from private individuals in Arab countries, and they should go after that. But also, humanitarian assistance is very important at this time.
Well, Ambassador, in terms of getting the Arab world involved, it seems a lot of people feel that the burden falls on the international community, on the shoulders particularly of the Western community, and everyone's turning for help there. What do you see as the responsibility of the Arab world? How willing is it to get involved in Yemen?
I think they have showed some willingness in the past. I know in 2006 we had the Gulf countries and a number of international donors pledge, I think, that about $500 million in future economic assistance to Yemen. I don't think much of that money has flowed forward. I would agree with abdul-ghani that we are all disappointed in the lack of action, the lack of willingness to get involved in these kinds of dispute in their own neighborhood and try to resolve them, try to mediate them. We're not the best mediators here. The UN is not the best mediator. I think that Arab League, Gulf Council could play a role here.
Well, interestingly enough, a viewer by the name of Godfrey, using the initials NW via Facebook, sent us this comment: I think countries like Yemen should deal with their own problems with little international help from so-called, quote, friends and brothers. Is it, I mean, to some degree an issue of pride for the Yemenis, or is it also that the international community is too far stretched in trying to help the world?
I think both of those are true. Certainly there is a national pride and national responsibility that any government feels, that any people feel, to handle their own problems, and there is a degree of resentment when outsiders, whether they're close neighbors or powers like the United States, offer advice, offer assistance. And we are stretched. I think there's donor fatigue out there, and there is sort of crisis fatigue now. When you look at what confronts Washington these days, it's difficult to get yet another crisis on the plate. But I think in this case, we've got to do it.
Well, Mr. al-Iryani, there was a comment that came from a viewer from Oman, from a viewer by the name of Moyad al-Baluchi, who says, the recent events expose Yemen's vulnerability and discontents, which is an ideal combination for civil war. The support of neighboring countries' support is necessary to preserve Yemen's unity. How serious is or how seriously is the secession effort in the south being taken within Yemen itself?
It's very significant. It's a lot more serious than the war in Sa'da, despite the difference in human cost. However, both are easily solvable in the presence of strong political will and with the cooperation of our friends and brothers in the region. And I have in the past suggested that GCC must involve itself in helping Yemenis deal with not just the southern issue, but also various challenges that face Yemen. Help Yemenis come to a national consensus and decide what it is that they need to do to resolve their problems, and then help us implement those plans.
And sir, do you see the right steps being taken to generate that national consensus, to show people the value of unity as opposed to the country fragmenting again?
Well, unfortunately, the gap of confidence between various parties in Yemen has become so big that to bridge it, we may need assistance from a third party, and the GCC is the best.
We had a comment from our chatroom ambassador, which I'd like to put you to. So Adam in the live station is saying, with a new administration at the White House, will the US change its focus from fighting Al-Qaeda to improving food security in Yemen?
I don't think we need to change our focus. I think what we need to do is focus on both things. In order to truly resolve and to help Yemen, you have to help them fight Al-Qaeda inside Yemen, and you have to help them develop their economy, and agriculture is a huge part of that.
And of course,
the water shortage. There's lots that we could do.
This is what I was going to say. You mentioned at the beginning the water shortage is something we haven't really had a chance to talk much about. But how serious is it to the long-term stability and economic development of the country?
Yemen right now, I'm not real good on numbers, Riz, but Yemen has more than 3% population growth, which I think means the population will double within 17 to 20 years. The water tables are being tapped down to 1,000 meters in some places. It has no natural reservoirs or rivers. It relies on rainwater. People are coming into the cities. There are some predictions that Sana'a will be the first world capital to run out of water. It's that serious.
It was the first capital to have skyscrapers, essentially. I mean, it was one of the first points of civilization in growth. And
it's also one of the world's most beautiful places.
We've got a caller on the line from the UK. Abu Sara, what would you like to ask?
Actually, just our guest, the former U.S. ambassador, on the same day, 18th of July, 2 Iranian demonstrators being shot, and the West and USA made a lot of noise. The same day, 18 civilians being shot in Aden, and nobody ever mentioned them. I don't know why.
Okay, let me ask the ambassador. I mean, strategically, what does Yemen represent to the U.S.? I mean, looking at the greater region and how the U.S. is focused.
We've discussed the threat of a failed Yemen and an increasing Al-Qaeda presence, or a violent extremist presence in Yemen, and the threat that poses. But if you look at the position of Yemen, where is it? It's on the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. Shipping coming down through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea passes through the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. It's right there on the Horn of Africa because of Somalia, a very unstable area. And as I said, it's the underbelly, if you will, of the Arabian Peninsula. Strategically, politically, it's very important.
Well, Mr. al-Iryani, a thought as we have less than 30 seconds. Being there in Yemen itself right now, do you get a sense of optimism things are going to improve, or is there a sense of there's worse to come before it gets better?
No, the challenges are really great, and I'm not optimistic. But I hope that people in the country and our allies and friends will will come to the realization that the situation is too grave to ignore, and work together coherently in trying to bring Yemen out of the verge of collapse.
Okay, well, sir, I thank you very much for joining us from Sana'a in Yemen. Ambassador, good to have you in the studio as well, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Remember, you can watch a podcast of the show on iTunes. This week, we're featuring a discussion with the United Nations former Deputy Chief in Afghanistan, Peter Galbraith, who was fired for his outspoken comments about fraud in the recent elections. And on the next show, former bitter enemies, Turkey and Armenia, are re-establishing relations with an historic new treaty. But will it hold? Send us your questions and thoughts on that from me and the team. We'll see you next time.